Secret friends, unite!
Hey, welcome back to the Secret Friends Unite. Oops, all Thunderdome topic show. This is actually episode 544. I am your long-serving host, Charlie Carden, and this is our second episode of the new format. I'm kind of excited because this is the first time we're digging into talking about some heritage comic material, and I'm bringing on to our network for the first time a gentleman that I've known for a couple of years, who is a diehard Marvel Comics guy. He gets mentioned all the time. He's also one of our Patreons and has also been very helpful in a lot of the material we've developed for the Spotlight and a lot of the great creators and actors that we've met. I'd like to introduce everybody to Kurt Krug. Kurt, good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
You got it.
New frontier, and I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. I love it.
Scenes guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us, kind of in a shorter burst, how you became a Marvel Comics fan.
I was a kid, and this FF run, FF243, was my first.
No kidding. Okay. Yeah.
It was my gateway.
My goodness. All right. And we kind of jumped ahead here because that is what we're going to be talking about. Kurt did select this run from the Fantastic Four from the early 1980s that we're going to get into in a minute here. But so, Kurt, you started reading the Fantastic Four. How did you come upon it? Walked into a drugstore or something like that, or what went down?
Myers in Brighton, Michigan. The FF243 cover, I recognized a lot of the characters from the cartoons they had on sporadically in the 60s and 70s that were repeated. And I just thought, this is so cool. Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, the FF fighting this giant dude.
Yeah.
And I tried to draw that cover many times as a kid. It was the gateway. I mean, and
yeah.
John Byrne had just begun his run as the artist and writer of the FF. And I was 6 or 7. I didn't know who people were at that point.
Yeah.
But I just thought, wow, this art is cool. And that's what got me into the FF. Got me into Marvel.
Awesome. We will circle back to that in a moment. We're going to dig into talking about Fantastic Four Volume 1, numbers 242, 243, and 244. Right after this, and Kurt, this one, I feel like a dedication on the radio. This one goes out to you in particular. I start every one of our shows by talking about the wonderful folks over at our Secret Friend Squad over on Patreon. If you're listening to the sound of my voice and visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, a lot of great opportunities for exclusive programs, early versions of all our shows. All of our shows come out a day or so earlier, sometimes much earlier, over on the Discord. And we have a particular Discord channel just for the Patreons where a lot of great conversations are happening. So there's absolutely no reason to try this out. You get a week for free. After that, you stay on board for 50% off your first month. And after that, you stay on board for as little as $2 a month if you like what we have, which I think there's a good chance. If you're enjoying this program and the like of what we talk about, I think you'll like it very much. Again, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. We would love to see you over there. All right, back to the good stuff. So, young Kurt, that Meijer gas station, by the way, I stop by that gas station almost every time I'm over to Metro Detroit. It's easy on, easy off. So I know Brighton pretty well.
Yep.
Is that, so you're from Pinckney, Michigan, which is not far away, if I'm not mistaken.
Brighton was the central point of Livingston County, which was God's country back then.
Right, yeah, before the suburbanization. I know my uncle moved there back in about 1995 or so, and built a house just on a stack of dirt, because
Yeah,
that's what it was outside of town.
yeah. That,
So, yeah. So is that Meyer where you got a lot of your comics in the early days? Did you find a
yes,
shop later on?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. My mom would do it to shut me up.
Oh, well, isn't that how a lot of us got into the habit? No doubt about it. All right, so why not? So we got three issues. Why don't you give us kind of a Reader's Digest version of the story in these three issues that you selected? Just talk us through it.
Okay. At this stage, John Byrne was 1 year into his historic FF run, and he had done a back to basics approach. His run may have been controversial at points later on, but it's considered second best to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's run. They created the FF, and when they hit their stride and knew they were going to have a job for a while,
Yeah,
that was their flagship title. And the title, I wouldn't say was floundering, but it had peaks and valleys, and Byrne took it over and gave it a shot in the arm, which it desperately needed. He got a back the basics approach, and he really was warming up. And I think this is where he started showing just how talented a creator he is. Not that he hadn't before, but this seemed to be like his love letter to Stan and Jack's original Galactus trilogy, number 48 to 50. Galactus is a giant planet eating entity, a god in some ways. He's come to Earth, he's going to eat the Earth, and the FF have to stop him yet again. This time they have the Avengers and Doctor Strange at their back as they take him on. It was a very action-packed story, excellent art,
Mm-hmm.
and the stakes were very high. In the end, they defeat Galactus. That's not exactly a spoiler alert,
Right.
but
Well, it's not hard to not see that coming. Because and again, I had just a handful of notes for it overall. The last line of which being, "It's over. Galactus won't trouble us again," said no one ever. Because it never works out that way in the comics, like a TV show.
no, it never
You know
does.
what I mean?
Never does. And in the end, though, Galactus gets a new herald, which is the Human Torch's girlfriend, Frankie Ray. She becomes the new Nova.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had some thoughts on that kind of as we get closer to the end of it, because I as you can see in my notes, I did kind of some likes and dislikes. And so, you said Byrne was about a year into his run at this point. And John Byrne I've talked about on various podcasts, not including obviously this one throughout the years, certainly probably in the Spinner Rack, which was one of our Patreon shows from the past. Is that I have always, I like you, Kurt, we probably started reading at about the same time. You're about a year older than I am. So about a year after you found this, I found my first comic book in a pharmacy in the Village in Grosse Pointe, where I grew up, just on the rack. It was a license. It was a Star Wars comic book. And after that, John Byrne drew the first, and probably wrote as well, the first issue of The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, which was my other great love at the time. So it was several years before I even picked up a superhero comic book of any kind. And Spider-Man was mine, as you know. But this shifts into making this kind of a crossover epic without being kind of the ridiculousness of modern crossovers, which is like 58 different parts, and everybody's book has a different component to it. It's just a story that, because it takes place in New York City, both in New York City and then, as you'll see, thrust into space, because they're in like a little the island of Manhattan gets pulled out because Terex is just he's just a bad dude. He's trying to destroy things, trying to destroy Galactus, and essentially do what bad guys do. But we get the greater breadth of the Avengers, Cap, Thor, Iron Man because they're local, and then you get heroes like Spidey and Daredevil who kind of realize they're out of their depth,
Yes.
but still want to contribute.
Yes, and it's interesting you mentioned that because this was a crossover without being a crossover. They had a purpose for being in the story.
Right.
They just weren't in there for the hell of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is what so many of those feel like. Yeah.
They were in there because there was a purpose, and it's like Byrne established a hierarchy within the Marvel universe. Dee and Spidey were just street level heroes.
Right.
They couldn't contribute to much. You were hoping that they would join the fight instead of just watching it.
Right. Right. And this was before the Contest of Champions, which I think was in like about 83 or so. And then before Secret Wars.
Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, it's funny that story, that Contest of Champions, which was like a 3-issue limited series. I feel like I've never really read it. Where Secret Wars, I have read a half a dozen times because of my affinity for it. And I probably should really knock down because it does have, that story has more kind of cosmic elements, but with established characters like the Collector, which are even more familiar to non-comic readers who are fans of the MCU, because that was Benicio del Toro's character that we saw in the Guardians films and in Infinity War, where he met his ignominious end. But a lot of grandeur I love in this. So the dialogue, I remember, kind of the literary references and the more kind of spaced out. And I wrote literary references, but I didn't write what it was. So if you remember it, feel free to jump in. But it does, for what the FF became under his domain, for lack of a better term, really just this bigger envelope of the cosmic corners, like a science fiction epic, because Byrne is a big Star Trek fan like you and I are. So you and I are like we are. So he follows that angle. I remember, and now I'm going to draw a blank on what it was, but I'm remembering my Marvel, my official guidebook to the Marvel, the Deluxe Edition, which I grew up reading when I was 11, 12 years old, that as you're flipping through and you're going through alien races or whatever, there's one is for the Skrulls, and there's a picture of him drawing, there's a drawing of his that's adapted into that. That's a picture of a Skrull starship bridge, and the captain of that bridge is sitting in a direct pose of William Shatner's Captain Kirk, like with a tilted down with the hand on the chin kind of thing. So
no kidding.
Yeah. And I mean, and as you know, Byrne went on in his later years to be involved with IDW and doing Star Trek comics. Yeah. The Dr. McCoy one, of which I think is one of the best ones he did, or the adaptation of The Adventures of Gary Seven. So what came after that, Assignment Earth, which was the season 2 finale of 2S. But I digress. What are some other things that you loved about it?
Well, it reiterated that Galactus is beyond good and evil, but he is a force of nature who has to feed to survive.
Right.
And that I didn't get that as a kid. I just thought he was a giant bad guy. No, he wasn't a giant bad guy. He wasn't Godzilla. He wasn't it's escaping me. Just think of another giant bad guy.
Like, one of the other rogues galleries of Godzilla, like, King Kong or Mothra, or one of those.
Yeah, he wasn't one of those. He could kill them in a heartbeat because he's Galactus. He's godlike. And I didn't get that as a kid, but as I grew up, it's like, okay, this makes sense now. And later on in his run, Byrne establishes that Galactus has a purpose in the greater universe, and people perceive him differently. That was during the trial of Galactus, which this story sets up. Because rather than let him die at the end, the FF save him. And that is a very big no-no to all the other cosmic alien races out there.
Right.
Did not like that.
Right, because they want him out of the way, but Reed has a very physicians do no harm. It's very much a, Starfleet from Star Trek. Again, we're here to help, like the Vulcans, you know what I mean? And, if there's good to be done, we'll do good. But, looking at that same prime directive aspect of it, don't interfere with the, blah, 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 oh my God, now I can't remember the natural machinations of another society, a lesser society in some case, or other ones. They don't consider themselves, judge, jury, and executioner of Galactus simply because the way that he survives results in the death of others. It reminds me of, because I watched it not that long ago. There was an episode of Next Generation. You remember the crystalline entity? Does that ring a bell?
Vaguely. Talk about.
Yeah, it was this thing, the planet that Data was from. It was wiped out by this spaceborne creature that just absorbs nutrients from space,
Okay.
from planets.
Okay.
And then it ends up coming back in a later season, and Picard is trying to communicate with it and he compares it to the the humpback whale on Earth, or another whale of some kind that simply consumes cuttlefish as it eats. It's feeding. So it's very much the same. But yeah, you're right. The cosmic peanut gallery, as it were, out there don't really dig that, Reed had a chance to off him. It's kind of like the Borg, it had a chance to off him, but didn't do it.
Yeah, and Picard gets his ass chewed in a later episode by
Exactly.
one
Right.
woman admiral. But
yeah, Admiral in the chaff. But anyway, talking too much about Star Trek.
Yeah, I also thought Byrne was spot on with his characterization. Iron Man didn't want to save him.
Right.
He did not want to save him. And today they'd probably make it so he'd sabotage their little doohickey that they created to save him. They probably
he probably would. Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me. I know you and I have talked about bloated crossovers in the 1990s. The Operation Galactic Storm that ran across all of the Avengers titles at the time. That was and Iron Man was a very antagonistic character in that. So yeah, I see what you're saying. But yeah, you're right. He had a characterization, but he didn't really take it too far.
Yeah.
Because in doing that, it would have obviously pulled the focus away, not only from the FF being that it's their book, but from Reed as a character and overall, destroying Galactus as a character, which is, what he says, Galactus won't trouble us again, which is not at all close to being correct.
Not at all. And, just going back to Iron Man for a second, okay, he was outvoted. Maybe he didn't like it, but he went along with it.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen today. They always have to have the heroes fighting one another, and I know that's what made Marvel stand out back in the 60s, but there's got to be a purpose to it. They just
I agree
to do it, and that's what they've done today, which is too bad. But anyway, back to this. He also showed that Sue is the most powerful FFer.
Yes.
He did a lot with Sue. He eventually made her the Invisible Woman. I think he should have done that much, much sooner. But point is, he made her the Invisible Woman, which was long overdue.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, it was really, comparing it back to Fantastic Four First Steps, the film that came out this past summer, it was very obvious that Sue was the key member of the team.
Yes.
But she also was not disrespected in the same fashion, certainly that she was in the early run of the FF. Yeah. Some of that dialogue that Stan wrote of the, oh, you're just a woman and blah, blah, blah. Like, even some of it was evident in that first Galactus arc, which I think we was read and discussed on this podcast earlier this summer.
Yes, it was.
And huge jump forward.
Yes. Yeah. And Stan Lee, people called Stan Lee's female superheroes like Sue and Marvel Girl his housewife heroines. I didn't make it up. That was a term. I don't know who did.
Sure.
But they were always the damsels in distress. They were always looking after the men. Marvel Girl looked after the X-Men. Sue was the mother hen of the FF.
Yeah.
And Byrne got her away from that.
Right, which is, it's funny because of some of the dislikes that I put on my note. It's like there's the friend character of Frankie Ray, Julie Angel. with the dark hair and everything. I wrote it's just, you and I have talked about this a lot as I'm reading some of Byrne's work. She's just drawn overly sexualized no matter what she's doing. It's kind of Byrne's. I wrote a boilerplate Byrne wet dream, because he's just yeah. And then piling on top of that, when Frankie does go and she makes that difficult, that drawn out decision that I'm choosing to serve Galactus. That's what I'm choosing, because she already had powers at this point. But then Galactus imbued her with, he cranked her up to 11. He made her cosmic so that they could go off together, and because it's her job to find him worlds to munch on. But then Johnny's line that, "Oh, Frankie's gone. Tell me why I should bother go on living." I mean, come on. It's a bit much, and it feels like you're writing it for kids at that point, which you kind of are. But I find it just like it's too much. Captain Kirk wouldn't say that. He would just get over it.
Yeah, he would. And that was the thing, is Johnny was always a playboy.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have a new girlfriend every other issue, it seemed.
Yeah, like Seinfeld.
Yeah, and Byrne did do something about that too with Alicia, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Oh yes, we're not going down that road
for another time. But
yes,
Johnny was just what I never quite got is you have Reed, a man of science, very pragmatic, but Johnny, craved the fame, the spotlight. That never got explored. I mean, I don't think he would ever approve of him being such a playboy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Even Cap would say, we have to be role models to the nation. We can't be doing this. He wouldn't have approved. But anyway, that's just a relationship that really hasn't been explored, because it just seems Reed and Johnny are so disparate. It's right, because they're family that they're brought together. And I get that, but I wish there was a little bit more to their relationship.
Yeah.
Byrne scratched some of the surface of that in subsequent issues he did. But, that relationship is a very odd one, and just something that I think should be fleshed out a little bit more. Sue, her relationship with the team, Byrne fleshed out beautifully. Mm-hmm. Reed, too, his relationship with Sue, she didn't wait on him hand and foot. I mean, he got rid of that.
Yeah.
And he saw her more as an equal. And I think a lot of what we saw in that FF movie, that was taken from Byrne. I saw
totally
Byrne's fingerprints on it.
Yeah, I love it. And, and it's unfortunate that Byrne he's a recluse in this day and age, and somewhat for some good reason, that we weren't able to get his take on this. Because I know from talking to some of the Marvel creators that you've helped introduce me to, that there was a screening of the film in the early summertime that a lot of those guys, particularly New York guys, were invited to. And it's a shame that Byrne wasn't part of that, because to me, I consider him second to none to Stan and Jack as far as making the FF the best that it can be. Because again, I read that entire run earlier this summer. Was kind of a goal of mine to read that entire run, I think from 232 to 295, if I'm just pulling numbers out of the air.
No, you're not.
I think that was the entirety of it. But revisiting this was absolutely great. No, I think that this was an awesome choice. Other big visuals I loved. Galactus assembling his big world-eating doohickey on top of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. It's like is particularly in context to now, that is just an image for the ages.
Yeah, it's an antique today, but and
it was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
When you have Thor, I say thee nay, as he's about to flip the switch. It's like,
right.
Thor saves the day and takes the fight to Galactus. I mean, that was just a cool image.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when Reed slingshots Ben into Galactus's face, takes him down finally.
Yeah. I didn't get, there was, and there's probably an explanation, but again, having read the the run, I guess it didn't jump out at me, but the thing had reverted to kind of his lumpy oatmeal style appearance as opposed to like the hexagonal skin that is most associated with his appearance. Do you recall if there was a reason for that,
Yes.
or was it just a one-off?
No, Byrne was going back to basics because that's how he looked when he
Right.
first appeared in Stan and Jack's run. I think he was trying to cure him, and it backfired. And instead of curing him, he looked lumpy.
Right. Lumpy.
And then they fixed that a few issues later, I believe. And he had his definitive look at that point.
Yeah. Awesome. Good deal.
So yeah, that was part of Byrne's back to basics approach. And I heard throughout his run, he did little visual tributes to Kirby. I didn't know that. I mean, I'd have to look again, but I'm not at all surprised because Kirby is one of his big influences.
Yeah, and as he is for so many back in those days, absolutely.
And
go ahead.
I would have to say that, yeah, you're right. Byrne is second to Stan and Jack, and the FF was Marvel's flagship title back in the 60s, not Spidey and definitely not the X-Men. The X-Men did not sell back then, kiddies.
Oh, not at all.
Contrary to what you might see today, the X-Men did not sell. And at that point, it was more Spidey and the X-Men that were dominating the sales charts. And Byrne had a big hand in the X-Men, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
This got the FF back up on those sales charts.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yeah, I can't speak.
Yeah. Excellent. Very good. Well, cool. Any final thoughts before we start to wind down?
Not off the top of my head. I think that Byrne was just really starting to hit a stride. And when he did the Trial of Galactus, which was probably the apex of his 5-year run, could it get any better than that? Maybe, maybe not. But he still had some very, very good stories left in him, like The Coming of the She-Hulk.
Right.
And that Mephisto story, and just bringing Doom back because he had killed Doom a couple of times. But
well, yeah, and Christoph, his ward, who he uploaded his brain to. Yeah, I remember that pretty well.
He also, with Galactus, how he reestablished that Galactus was a force of nature. He also reestablished that Doom was a very bad dude.
Yeah, right. Yes, the worst.
He was Marvel's definitive villain.
Well, and that is obviously what our producers of the MCU are banking on for their return to glory over the next couple of years at the box office.
Let's hope they can pull it off, because Downey is a good person, a good actor, but I just don't see him as Doom. Doom is a very tough nut to crack. Doom is Darth Vader. Other bad guys are afraid of him, and he has that presence. And he has that, to me, he always had that James Earl Jones voice.
Right. Yeah. Nope. I never really thought about it that way. But that's conversation for another time. Indeed. We will wrap it up. But yeah, this is, so if you were to rate this little 3-issue arc out of 10, what's your landing? I have a good feeling.
I would give it an 11 because there's the nostalgic factor for me. I mean, this was my first first comic as a kid, and rereading it as an adult, I appreciate it, and I still like it. It makes me feel like a kid again. And it's just one of those stories where it's like, yeah, you can look back and say, this was how it should be done. And people need to take a page from this story to tell good stories today, not just crossovers for shits and giggles.
Yeah, which we have plenty of that. I would err, I won't spinal tap it like you did, but I would say this is probably an 8.5 or a 9 for me. I deduct for the things that Byrne does that annoys me, like the over-sexualization of women, which he does with Julie Angel, and then the melodrama just kind of maybe going a bridge too far. But it's a great story in a grand scope which the FF is banked on. So I think that this was pretty terrific. And this has been a great conversation, Kurt. I know that you were probably a bit nervous getting on doing this. We're dealing with some technical things, but
Yep.
I would love to keep this going, that you and
Absolutely.
I delve into some heritage comics and we educate people. This has been terrific. So thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, and looking forward to doing this more down down the road. Looking
Abs-
forward to doing this more down the road. Let's.
Absolutely. If people want to reach you out in the social media sphere and talk about comics with you, where can people find you?
I'm just on Facebook. You can Kurt Anthony Krug on Facebook.
Just like all those Marvel guys, they love Facebook.
Yeah.
Come to find. Well, awesome. Well, as always, you can track me down on the big three social medias that I use, which is Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. I am at the C3, TheCeeThree. I have gotten more active in running our YouTube channel for Secret Friends Unite and starting a TikTok, which you can see me with nearly daily videos, little short videos where I'm just telling you about what I'm enjoying. But that'll lead you right back here. Also, secretfriendsunite.com, our website, is the place to find all of our content. And then absolutely, of course, our Discord, which is absolutely great place to have chats about all things related to pop culture and geek culture. We would love to have you there. But Kurt, that's been awesome having you on board.
Likewise.
And I'll wrap us up by thanking you, everybody, again for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring. Keep on trucking. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.